let's look at doing the orthographic sketches. And what I've got here, I printed out the graph paper that I've got attached to the assignment. You can print that and use it, or you can use a 1/4-inch graph paper that you've purchased. That would be fine. The difference is that this has kind of a border around it. And so when we do the calculations that I'm going to talk about in a moment, you just have to adjust your values. So here's, we're going to be doing these two objects right here, 1 and 2. And the video is going to be over number 1 today. And this is isometric graph paper, and it has triangles instead of squares. And so what we do is we count the triangles. If we assume a triangle is 1/4 of an inch, that's kind of how we determine the size of this object. And so it's going to be hard to see on the video, so I'm not going to try and point to each of them as I count. But there's 5 triangles going up. So 5 times 1/4 of an inch means my height is 1 1/4 inch. Okay. You count across, I got my notes here next to me. You count across here, we've got 3. You count across here, we've got 5, which gives me a total length of 8. Well, inset here is 1. So a height here of 2. Total height of 5. I talked about that, so that makes that 3. So that gives you an idea of your sizes. But when we're going to sketch it at a 2-to-1 scale, so you'll take your measurements here and multiply it by 2. All right, so to start with, we need to know where we're going to put our drawings at. And so we're going to center these things up. And to do the calculations, the horizontal spacing, we'll start with that. So if I take my rule, and if I measure this border to border, I get 9 3/4 inches. You're doing it on full-size graph paper, that's going to be 11 inches. So you just have to adjust with that. And so I take, to get the horizontal spacing, I need the length of the object across the front, and I need the depth of the object in a side view. So my length is 8. Okay, so I'm just going to write those over here. My length is 8 squares. Okay, and then my depth is 4 squares. So that gives me a total of 12 squares. 4, 8, and then 12. So that makes 3 inches. But I'm doing it at a 2-to-1 scale, which would make it 6 inches. It gives me 3 3/4. And now I want to divide that by 3 because I've got 3 spaces. So that gives me an answer of 1 1/4 inch. So from the side of my border, I'm going to come over 1 1/4 inch. I put a mark on my graph paper there. You can do it high, you can do it low. Just so you'll be able to see it. I'm going to mark with a Sharpie there. And then I'll do the same on the right side. Don't put those Sharpie marks on your paper. That's just so you can see what we're dealing with here in the video. So the vertical spacing. I measure my paper, I get 7 1/2. And then I counted the squares of my object. It's 5 squares tall in the front view, 4 squares, 5 in the front view, 4 squares deep in the top view, which gives me 9 squares. Flip that over to 18, so it'd be 18 squares. When I double it, which gives me a a distance or a size of 4.5 inches. I subtract that, and of course I get 4.5. I get 3 inches, divide 3 by 3 gives me a 1 inch spacing. So I'm going to come down, I'm going to put just a mark on the outside of my borders. Now what this does is this gives me the locations that I want to start my drawings. So I'm going to start, my front view will start here, my top view will start here, and my right side view will start right here. Okay, now I've just made those circles so that you can see that. And so now, if I look at my object, let's start with the front view. It's 5 squares tall. So I'm going to draw it 10 squares tall, and you can count these. That's fine. You can measure them. You can count them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10. I can use a straight edge. Draw that in. Okay, and it's 8 squares long, which is 16. When I double it, okay, and so I know this part up here is 2 squares tall, so that'll be 4. Part here is 3 squares wide, which will be 6. And this was over 1 square over, which would be 2. So there's my front view, and I imagine that might be a little difficult for you to see in the video. I don't really want to go over with the Sharpie though. All right, well, okay. So now let's look at their top view. We know it's going to start here. It's 4 squares wide, so that'll be 8 down to here. And I know if I look at my top, looking down on it, look down, I've got a rectangle here, rectangle with a notch cut out here. So for my length, I can just take these measurements that I've already got here, and I know that this one goes all the way across. The back of my object goes all the way to the end. Okay, and I know it comes back up 2 squares, which would be 4 to here. And it comes over the same distance to here. Next across. Okay. Now my side view, let's look at it. I know it's going to be 8 squares wide because it's the same as here. Okay, so that's got my depth established. and I can set my heights based on these things. And if I were to look at my isometric view, if I'm looking in this direction, I've got a square here, and a rectangle here. And the edges are the same all the way around. So I can take this height, because I know looking at it from the end, it's kind of a big rectangle. Got this line coming across from here where we got a surface plane. Then I know it's half of the depth for that part. If you made a bunch of extra marks on here and you need to erase, you can take a piece of paper and kind of lay it over the corner that you want to keep. You just drag your eraser along it. Or you can use a credit card, driver's license, something thin. Kind of clean up where you may have drawn longer than you should have, okay? So that's pretty much got my object. I can't erase those circles that I created just to show you what things were going to look like. Come back and kind of darken it in a little bit with your pencil, and then put the assignment name on it. It really, I'm just going to say activity 5-5. Put your name on it. And there you go.